Everyone thought Maya Vance's life was completely over when she became the internet's biggest joke, but the strange black envelope left on her ruined doorstep was about to make her the most powerful woman in the city. The rain was hitting the window pane of her small apartment in heavy, angry drops. It matched her mood perfectly. It had been the most brutal week of her entire life. It was a week of non-stop, endless public humiliation. First came the leaked audio clip. It was a short, out-of-context soundbite that completely destroyed her rising career. She was a top crisis manager. She fixed other people's problems for a living. But when that clip hit the internet, she could not fix her own. Then came the polite but very cold email from her boss. It was a corporate firing. They told her that her services were no longer needed. They wished her well, but they wanted her gone. Finally, her boyfriend of 3 years, Liam, had packed his bags. He walked out the door and vanished. He left behind nothing but unpaid bills and a deep sense of betrayal. He did not want to be with someone who was a public joke. Was it even possible for a life to fall apart this fast? 3 days. That was all it took to lose her job, her reputation, and her partner. Maya sat on her cheap sofa and stared at the sleek black envelope in her hands. It had arrived by private courier just an hour ago. The envelope was heavy and expensive. It was stamped with the silver logo of Sterling Vanguard. Sterling Vanguard was a massive, elite tech company. Maya only knew the name from the intimidating financial news she read online. She had never worked with them. She had no idea why they were writing to her. With shaking fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside, a piece of heavy paper slid out. It was a cashier's check. Maya blinked. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. It was a check for $15,000. Attached to the check was a single typed card. It was a short, demanding message. It told her to appear at the Sterling Vanguard headquarters at exactly 9 a.m. the next day. There was no explanation. There was no signature, just a time and an address. She had exactly 24 hours to decide if selling her pride was worth saving her future. Her bank account was basically empty. Her professional name was currently trending as a global internet joke. She really had no choice. She took the check. The next morning, Maya cashed the ridiculous check and walked to the towering glass skyscraper. Looking up at the building from the street made her feel incredibly small. She walked into the lobby. It was cold, filled with dark marble and quiet people in expensive suits. She gave her name to the front desk. A security guard led her to a private elevator. It required a fingerprint scan to operate. The elevator shot up to the top floor. She stepped out into an atmosphere that felt like a freezer. It was perfectly clean, totally silent, and highly intimidating. A secretary made her wait for exactly 20 minutes. Maya knew this was a power move. It was meant to make her nervous. Finally, the heavy wooden doors opened. She was shown into the massive office of Julian Sterling. Julian was a notoriously ruthless businessman. He was famous for destroying his competitors without ever showing an ounce of emotion. In person, he was even more frightening. He was tall, with very sharp features. He wore an impeccably tailored dark suit. His eyes were a pale, icy blue, and they showed absolutely zero feeling. He did not smile. He did not offer his hand. He did not waste time with small talk. "Have a seat, Miss Vance," Julian said. His voice was deep and completely flat. Maya sat in the leather chair across from his giant mahogany desk. "Thank you. I assume this meeting is about a job." "In a manner of speaking," Julian replied. He stood up and walked to the massive window looking over the city. "I require a fiancée." Maya stared at him. She thought she had misheard him. "Excuse me?" "I require a fiancée," Julian repeated, turning to face her. "And you, Miss Vance, require immediate financial help and a complete repair of your public image." Maya felt a flash of anger. You brought me here to insult me and ask me to fake marry you. Are you out of your mind?" "I am completely logical," Julian said calmly. He walked back to his desk and opened a folder. "My company is facing a critical moment. My board of directors is anxious. They want stability. They want a family man leading the company. A sudden, stable marriage will calm the markets." "Then hire an actress," Maya shot back. "Actors act," Julian said dismissively. "I need someone who understands crisis management. I need someone who knows how to handle the press. You are perfect for this. But there is a second, more important reason." Julian's icy eyes flickered for just a second. It was the first sign of human emotion she had seen. "My sister passed away in a tragic car accident a year ago," Julian continued. His voice dropped slightly. "She left behind 3 children. I am their legal guardian. I promised her I would protect them. But I am a businessman. I work 80 hours a week. The children require a maternal figure. They need someone present." Maya's anger slowly faded into shock. "You want me to be a fake wife and a fake mother?" "I want you to be a stable presence," Julian corrected her. "The parameters are simple. In exchange for 2 years of your life, you will live in my penthouse. You will play the role of my loving partner in public. You will manage the household and the children. In return, you will receive total financial security. I will pay all your debts. You will receive a massive payout when the contract ends, and I will use my PR team to completely clear your ruined name." Maya looked down at her hands. Desperation is often the strongest foundation for the most unexpected alliances. She had nothing. He had everything. But she was not going to be a simple puppet. "I will not sign away my life blindly," Maya said firmly. She looked right into his icy blue eyes. "Especially not when children are involved. I will not agree to this until I meet them." Julian looked surprised. Most people just nodded and took his money. He tilted his head, slightly amused by her defiance. "Very well," Julian said. He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Bring the children in." A few minutes later, the heavy oak doors opened. What walked through those doors changed the direction of Maya's life forever. The first to enter was a boy who looked about 9 years old. He was wearing a small blazer and carrying a yellow legal notepad. His face was very serious. "Uncle Julian," the boy said clearly, "you interrupted my reading time. This better be highly important." "It is, Leo," Julian said. "This is Miss Vance." Leo turned his sharp eyes to Maya. He looked her up and down, analyzing her like a difficult math problem. "Are you the new nanny? Because the last 3 quit. They lacked emotional regulation skills." Maya held back a smile. "I'm not a nanny, Leo. I'm a friend of your uncle's." Next to walk in was a little girl, maybe 7 years old. She had messy braids and huge, piercing brown eyes. She did not say hello. She just walked right up to Maya and stared deeply into her face. "You look very sad," the little girl said bluntly. "Your eyes look like it was raining inside your head." Maya's breath caught in her throat. The girl was far too observant. "I've had a hard week," Maya admitted softly. "What is your name?" "Clara," the girl said, never breaking eye contact. "I don't like loud noises." Before Maya could respond, the door flew open again. A tiny boy, no older than 5, crashed into the room like a wild tornado. He ran past Julian, spun around a chair, and stopped right in front of Maya. He was breathing heavily and smiling widely. "Do you know how to make chocolate chip cookies?" the little boy yelled loudly. "Because Uncle Julian tried to bake and the fire alarm screamed for 20 minutes. "Max, please lower your voice," Julian sighed, rubbing his temples. "I do know how to make cookies," Maya told Max, smiling genuinely for the first time in days. "And I promise not to set off the fire alarm." Maya looked at the 3 children. They were not props for a corporate PR stunt. They were grieving, brilliant, and desperately lonely kids. They were trapped in a cold, silent world with a man who treated human emotions like a computer error. They needed warmth. They needed someone to care. Maya turned back to Julian. Her mind was made up. "I will agree to the contract," Maya said. Her voice was strong. "But I have my own conditions. I am not going to be a cardboard cutout. If I am doing this, I demand real authority over their daily lives. I decide what they eat. I decide their schedules. I manage their emotional well-being. You will not overrule me on matters regarding the children." Julian frowned. He was not used to being given rules. He liked to be in complete control. But he looked at the children, and then back at Maya's determined face. "Agreed," Julian said reluctantly. Moving into the Sterling penthouse the next week was a very strange experience. It was like moving into a beautifully decorated, highly expensive museum. Everything was made of glass, steel, and white leather. It was spotless. But it lacked warmth, laughter, and any real sense of home. Dinner that first evening was a total disaster. The dining table was huge, meant for 20 people. The 5 of them sat clustered at one end. The silence was deafening. Leo brought his notepad to the table. "I have prepared a presentation on why my bedtime should be pushed to 10 o'clock, Leo announced. "Based on peer-reviewed sleep studies, my brain requires less sleep than average." "Your bedtime is 8:30, Leo," Julian said flatly, not looking up from his plate. "That is an arbitrary rule without logical backing," Leo argued, his face getting red. Meanwhile, Clara sat perfectly still. She was silently judging every interaction, moving her peas around her plate but not eating. Max, on the other hand, was turning his dinner into an elaborate, messy construction site. He was stacking mashed potatoes into a tower and flying a piece of broccoli around like an airplane. "Max, stop playing with your food," Julian commanded. Max ignored him. The broccoli airplane flew out of his hand and sailed across the table. Maya caught the flying broccoli right out of the air. Everyone stopped and looked at her. "Okay," Maya said loudly, putting the broccoli down. "This is not working. We are going to build a routine that actually feels human. Leo, put the notepad away. We don't negotiate bedtimes at the dinner table. Clara, if you don't like peas, you can have carrots, but you have to eat a vegetable. And Max, if you throw food again, you will help me wash the dishes." Julian looked at Maya in shock. The children looked at her with wide eyes. But amazingly, Leo closed his notepad. Clara quietly asked for carrots, and Max picked up his fork. It was the beginning of a very long, delicate war of attrition. Over the next several weeks, Maya worked tirelessly to bring life into the frozen household. She realized quickly that she could not just order the children to be happy. She had to earn their trust slowly. With Leo, she challenged his strict logic with empathy. When he got upset about his routine changing, she didn't just tell him to get over it. She sat down with him and explained why changes happen. She gave him books on emotional intelligence instead of just science. Slowly, Leo began to realize that feelings were not math problems to be solved, but experiences to be felt. With Clara, Maya used gentle vulnerability. Clara was terrified of being ignored, so she watched everything. Maya started painting with her in the afternoons. They would sit in comfortable silence, mixing colors. One day, Clara finally spoke up and talked about how much she missed her mother. Maya held the little girl while she cried, proving that the penthouse was a safe place for sadness. With Max, Maya channeled his wild, destructive energy into creative projects. They built massive forts out of expensive sofa cushions. They baked cookies, making huge messes in the spotless kitchen. Max stopped acting out for attention because Maya was freely giving him the attention he craved. And Julian? Julian watched all of this from a distance. He would stand in the doorway of his home office, watching Maya laugh with Max on the floor. He would listen from the hallway as Maya gently sang Clara to sleep. Maya noticed him watching. She saw the icy walls around his heart slowly begin to crack. He didn't know how to join in, but he clearly wanted to. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Maya found Julian in the kitchen. He was awkwardly trying to make a cup of tea. "Let me help," Maya said softly, stepping next to him. Their hands brushed against each other as she reached for the kettle. A sudden, sharp spark of electricity jumped between them. Julian pulled his hand back quickly, clearing his throat. "You are doing a very good job with them," Julian said, his voice unusually quiet. "They are happier." "They just needed to know it's okay to be kids," Maya replied, looking up at him. For a long moment, Julian just looked at her. His icy eyes were not cold anymore. They were warm, full of a strange, unspoken emotion. It was a moment of deep connection. But just as a fragile harmony began to bloom in the penthouse, the past arrived to tear it all down. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Maya was in the playroom with the kids. Max was showing her a drawing of a dinosaur when the heavy penthouse doors swung open without warning. A glamorous, incredibly beautiful woman stepped out of the elevator. She wore a bright red designer dress and high heels that clicked sharply on the marble floor. Her face was twisted in anger. It was Elena, Julian's vicious ex-girlfriend. Elena stormed right into the playroom. She looked at Maya with pure disgust. "So, you are the cheap replacement," Elena sneered, her voice dripping with poison. Leo immediately stood up and stepped in front of Clara. Max hid behind Maya's legs. "Excuse me?" Maya said, standing up tall. "Who are you, and how did you get in here?" "I am the woman who should be living here," Elena shouted. "Julian and I were perfect together until he decided to ruin his life by taking in these noisy brats." "Do not speak about them that way," Maya warned, her voice dropping dangerously low. Elena laughed coldly. "Don't play the hero, honey. We all know you are just a paid employee. Julian Sterling is incapable of love. He is a machine. He bought you to fix his PR problem. The second your contract is up, he will throw you out on the street like garbage. You mean absolutely nothing to him." "I said leave," Maya commanded. She stepped forward, physically placing herself between Elena and the frightened children. "You are not welcome in this home." Elena glared at her, but the pure determination in Maya's eyes made her step back. "You will." "Learn the hard way," Elena spat, before turning around and marching back to the elevator. When Julian came home that night, the housekeeper told him what had happened. He immediately called Maya into his dim, quiet study. He looked furious. "I have doubled security downstairs," Julian said, pacing behind his desk. "Elena will never be allowed in this building again. I am so sorry she spoke to you that way. I am sorry she upset the children." "I handled it," Maya said softly, standing by the door. Julian stopped pacing. He looked at her. He walked slowly from behind his desk until he was standing just inches away from her. The professional distance between them was completely gone. "You defended them," Julian murmured. His voice was thick with emotion. He reached out and gently tucked a loose piece of hair behind Maya's ear. Maya's heart hammered wildly against her ribs. She looked up into his eyes. "They are my family right now," she whispered. "Just right now?" Julian asked softly. Before they could untangle their confusing, escalating feelings, a massive disaster struck. The very next morning, the news broke. Apex Solutions, Julian's biggest and fiercest corporate rival, launched a massive, ruthless smear campaign. It was everywhere. Every news channel, every website, every social media platform was talking about it. Apex Solutions had leaked manipulated fake documents to the press. The news anchors told terrible lies. They claimed that Julian Sterling was a monster. They suggested he was an unfit guardian who only took custody of the children to steal his late sister's company shares. Even worse, the reporters hinted at dark rumors. They suggested that Julian might have been involved in the tragic car accident that killed his sister. It was a complete nightmare. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Julian's lawyers were panicking. Child Protective Services announced they would be opening an investigation. Julian was at risk of losing his company, but more importantly, he was at risk of losing Leo, Clara, and Max. Julian sat in his office, his head in his hands. He looked defeated. "I can fight for the company," he said to Maya, his voice cracking. "But if they take the children away, I promised my sister I would keep them safe." The greatest defense against a fabricated scandal is an undeniable truth. Maya knew exactly what they had to do. She had been a top crisis manager for a reason. "We are not going to hide," Maya told Julian fiercely. "Apex Solutions is counting on you to lock the doors and hide behind your lawyers. It makes you look guilty. It makes you look cold." "What do you suggest?" Julian asked, looking up at her. "We go public, completely public," Maya declared. "No more hiding behind NDAs and locked doors. We invite a trusted journalist into this home. We let them see the truth. We show them the genuine, messy, beautiful family we have built here." Julian was hesitant. He hated the press. He hated having his private life exposed. But he looked at Maya's determined face and trusted her completely. The next week was a whirlwind. Maya organized a massive, transparent media blitz. A highly respected journalist and a camera crew were invited into the penthouse. They did not script anything. Maya insisted that the kids just be themselves. The public watched in amazement. They saw Leo's brilliant intellect as he proudly showed the cameras his color-coded schedules. They saw Clara's beautiful, artistic soul as she painted a picture of Julian and Maya holding her hands. They witnessed Max's joyful, wild chaos as he ran around in a superhero cape, eventually tackling his uncle onto the sofa. Most importantly, the public saw Julian. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a simple sweater. They saw his quiet, fierce devotion. They saw him gently wipe a smudge of paint off Clara's nose. They saw him patiently explain a science concept to Leo. The cold billionaire was gone. In his place was a tired, loving father figure. But the real tipping point came a few days later. Without telling anyone, 9-year-old Leo used his laptop to write an open letter. He published it on a major online forum. Leo's letter was incredibly eloquent. He wrote about his grief. He wrote about how hard the first few months were. But then, he defended his uncle. He wrote about Julian's clumsy but deeply loving attempts to be a parent. He wrote about how Maya brought light back into their dark world. "My uncle is not a monster," Leo wrote in the final line. "He is just a man who is trying his best to fix our broken hearts, and Maya is the glue that holds us together. We are a real family." The letter went completely viral. The public reaction shifted instantly. The smear campaign designed by Apex Solutions dissolved overnight under the heavy weight of their authentic, beautiful bond. The board of directors backed off. Child Protective Services closed the investigation immediately. The Sterling Vanguard stock prices skyrocketed. They had won. In the euphoric aftermath of their victory, Julian found Maya standing alone on the penthouse balcony. The city lights were glowing below them. Julian walked out into the cool night air. He didn't say a word. He just walked right up to Maya, pulled her tightly into his arms, and finally abandoned all of his calculated restraint. He kissed her. It was not a fake kiss for the cameras. It was a shattering of every contractual boundary they had set. It was raw, desperate, and overwhelmingly real. Maya wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him back with everything she had. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "I love you," Julian whispered against her forehead. "I don't care about the contract. I don't care about the company. I just care about you. You saved my family. You saved me. I love you too," Maya cried softly, holding on to him tightly. But the celebration was quickly interrupted by a shocking twist. An independent legal team had been quietly investigating Apex Solutions during the smear campaign. They were looking for the source of the fake documents. What they found unearthed a horrifying reality. Julian received the phone call the next morning. His face went completely pale. The rival CEO of Apex Solutions hadn't just spread vicious rumors. The investigation revealed a dark money trail. The CEO had paid a mechanic to tamper with Julian's sister's car a year ago. The tragic accident that orphaned Leo, Clara, and Max was not an accident at all. It was an orchestrated assassination meant to destroy the Sterling family line and force a corporate takeover. When the police were given the evidence, the arrests happened swiftly. The CEO of Apex Solutions was taken out of his office in handcuffs. The truth was finally out. That evening, the penthouse was incredibly quiet. The victory over the smear campaign felt completely different now. Julian asked Maya to sit with him in the living room. He called the children in. It was the hardest thing he ever had to do. Julian sat on the sofa, pulling Clara onto his lap. Leo sat stiffly in a chair. Max climbed next to Maya, sensing the heavy sadness in the room. Gently, with tears in his eyes, Julian explained the difficult truth to the children. He told them that bad men had caused the accident, but that those men were now locked away forever. He promised them that they were safe and that nothing would ever hurt them again. Tears were shed. It was a painful, traumatic night. Clara cried openly into Julian's chest. Leo completely broke down, his logical mind unable to process the cruelty of the world. Max just held on to Maya's hand very tightly, but they faced the trauma together. They were anchored by the unshakable foundation of love that Maya had helped build. They did not fall apart. They leaned on each other. A full year passed. The sterile, cold penthouse had been completely transformed. There were toys scattered on the expensive rugs. There were finger paintings taped to the stainless steel refrigerator. There was laughter echoing through the halls every single day. It was a vibrant, messy, beautiful home. The sun was shining brightly as Maya and Julian stood in the center of their private rooftop garden. There were no reporters. There were no board members. There was no fake contract. Today, they were exchanging real vows. No stipulations, no expiration dates, just a permanent promise to love each other forever. Leo stood at the front, holding his ever-present notepad. He had insisted on officiating the ceremony. He cleared his throat and spoke with precise, heartfelt logic about the statistical probability of finding true love in unexpected places. Clara stood beside Maya. She was managing the wedding rings with eagle-eyed focus, making sure everything was perfect. Max was running around the chairs in a tiny tuxedo. He was serving as the self-appointed head of cake security, loudly warning the few guests not to touch the chocolate frosting. Julian held Maya's hands. He looked into her eyes, and there was no ice left at all, only pure, burning warmth. "You brought me back to life," Julian said softly, his voice full of emotion. "You showed me that love is not a weakness. It is the greatest strength we have." "You gave me a home," Maya whispered back, tears of joy in her eyes. "You gave me everything." As Julian kissed his true wife, the children cheered loudly. Max ran up and hugged their legs. Clara smiled a huge, beautiful smile. Leo nodded in approval. Julian realized in that moment that the greatest risk he ever took in his entire life wasn't a corporate merger or a business deal. The greatest risk was allowing his frozen heart to be vulnerable. Family is never defined by simple bloodlines or cold legal paperwork. It is not something you are just born into. True family is forged in the hot fire of shared struggles. It is chosen every single day. It is sustained by an unconditional, endless willingness to show up for the people you love, no matter how hard things get. Vance was once the woman everyone laughed at. She was the ultimate punchline. But she stood in that garden, surrounded by a husband who adored her and 3 children who loved her deeply. She was now the woman who had absolutely everything she ever wanted.